We just got back from Gold Canyon just to take a little R&R, and Kevin and I really love to get out into the desert. And we went to this old ghost town in the canyon, which is the Apache Trail. If you guys ever get to Arizona, you got to check this place out. It's amazing. They had a grave site, and I thought it was really interesting that a lot of these people, when they died, they put their beds on top of it. And I don't know, I'm going to look that up to tell you the truth to see why they did that. As I was looking at this one gravesite, I saw this little bird and missed the shot, but I was like, oh my gosh, this little bird is, hanging out here. And it wasn't afraid of me, probably because there's so many people. So I started playing around, and you can see it's fluffy. And if any of you guys know birds, it is kind of sad. Usually when they're fluffy, they're not feeling too good. So it was kind of ironic that this bird was hanging out at the gravesite. So that's just getting a little deep, but it was an adorable little bird. Let's go and check it out here. I loved it because it had old mining stuff. It had the person who had passed away in I think it was 96. And then I just sat there and started playing. So I want to tell you behind the scenes before I just post-process it, because it's not just throwing post-processing up and then just saying, oh, I'm just going to post-process it. It's like you got to feel, what are you going for and what did you like? Well, of course, this is what I like, old ghost towns, and this bird came upon me and I thought, oh wow, really, really cute. But I got other birds, but this has a little bit more meaning to me. I make presets because I know what I do a lot of. So I went to my presets, and I have other presets that are from other photographers, but pretty much as you begin to really post-processing, you kind of know the steps that you do all the time. And that's what's so awesome about having a preset. This one, for sure, I ended up going into the landscape vertical pop. I'll do a create a virtual copy because I always like to keep my original looking the same. So I went ahead and cropped, and it changes it dramatically. It makes it kind of wider. Now, I've made smart filters so you could see exactly what I've done. But I have to say, though, because I kept doing smart filters and my computer is getting loaded, it crashed on me. So you'll see the second image that I share is a recovery image because I had to start like a separate file. But I usually do that anyways, to tell you the truth, when I start getting into gigs. Down here at the bottom, you could see how large this file is. So let's just share with you the steps and the reasons that I did these steps. So again, you know the story. So I went into On1 Effects, and we'll go ahead and double click on that so I can get into On1. Now, when you again have a smart filter, what I always suggest is work on this, take a break, come back and see if you need to retweak anything from On1. So when you do the smart filter, smart objects, it keeps all the information that you've done. So here's everything that I've done. You can see that I've done a LUT. If I turn this off, you could see that the LUT is off, and here it is now. This is called color grading LUT, and you could see it's comfort. So there's so many different things that you could do, see, by just hovering over it. Now this is On1. Oh, here goes the dogs. You guys should know that. So anyways, there's different things that you can do to play with these. Then I did some dynamic contrast. I will turn that off. Here it is on, and it's bringing more of a texture to the rocks and the gravestone. So here On1 you could choose, here's a surreal, you could choose different areas that you would like to play with for your how you feel in the image, and then you could play with them here too, see? So it's up to you on what you would like to push. Then I wanted to add a vignette, and Lumencia has a vignette here. You could see it. Let's just go ahead and remove this, and I'll click vignette. Single layer mask. You could tell its tolerance and all that fun stuff, and I'm just going to say okay. You could see how it popped down here. You can also, this is through Lumencia, play with the vignette. See how it's making it darker? You could play with this in curves and really get detailed if you want. The next step was to go into Camera Raw because I don't want to go back and forth to Lightroom. So Lightroom and Camera Raw are so similar. And you could see when I click on it that what I was going for, and I'll share with you how I did it, but what I was going for was it's too bright here. So our eyes go to the bright areas, and I don't want everybody to go to this area, to this location. That's not the story. That's just the negative space that's part of the location. So I don't want your eyes to go there. So we will go into Camera Raw filter. When you work on a smart filter and you play, it automatically gives you a mask. And as you can see, that's one of the reasons why I really have a monthly challenge for masking. So when we get to that, we'll dive even deeper into masking. But I'll go ahead and double click on my raw filter. You could see here, you can see I brought the exposure down, the contrast down. I brought the shadows up because you'll see as I'm darkening this area, it starts becoming black in here. So you got to pay attention to everything. So I ended up pulling up the shadows. I also did a little bit of a saturation just because I knew I was going to saturate a little bit more. Wanted to keep it kind of even. Now I started getting into some details. One of the things that I notice in the bird, we'll get real close to the bird because the bird is my main focus. The bird didn't have one of the highlights in the eyes to bring it alive. So I went ahead, you could see here, look at how small that is. Here's the eye. Before, look at that. After. I brought a highlight, and all I did when I did that was take my paintbrush, make sure I was on white, and then make sure that I was really small, and I'm holding the Control Alt and Option at the same time to make my brush smaller and my hardness harder, because all I wanted to do was just a teeny little dot, which I did right there. And when I did that, I noticed, I need to start cleaning up a little bit around the eyes, and I decided to pull back the image and to really look at the distractions when I pulled back. So there's a couple distractions. So I did my first set of cleanup, and then the left of the bird, it's kind of like, the grass. Let's see. All these little things kind of, with the wind blowing, this right in here, this section right here. I decided it's just too distracting next to the bird because I really want you to go into the bird. So I went ahead and cleaned it all up. There's the before and there's the afterwards. And this way, I do like to have a separate layer when I'm not sure about what I'm doing. So I write down, okay, left of the bird, but maybe later I might like that. Now, I noticed that the bird, another thing that was distracting to me, that the bird had this white area, and I didn't really like having it so prominent. But when I went ahead and tried to mask it out, then you couldn't really see the beak. So in order to use a content-aware fill that I wanted to use, I have to make a stamp so it has pixel information to look at. So I made a stamp, And then I went ahead and fixed this area in here to give it a little bit more feathers. So what you need to do when you're using this content aware fill is you take your lasso tool and you get as close as you can to what you want to fix. So I want to fix this white area in here. Okay. So I've made a selection. Then I go to Edit, Content Aware Fill. You could see over here to the right the preview. This is the preview of what it's going to look like. So by removing some of this, you'll see it will change here. And that's what I did to get more feathers in. So I did, oops, there is feathers. I actually want to keep the feathers, Alt and Option, and add back that green. But I don't want any of the stem. See, now it looks more feathery. And let's just see what it does. We can always add back in some goodies. See, I'm not liking that. Apple Z. Let's go over here. That looks okay. Apple Z. Kind of like that better. But that's what I did. I just went back and forth, took some time to see what would look good. Oh, that looks pretty. But it's like you could tell it's two different things. So you could see it's not always going to be exact. Just get what you like. It's up to you on how you want to do it, but I like to output it to a new layer. It's just easy to delete it if you don't like it. So we'll just go ahead and put it onto a new layer, and I'm going to deselect the marching ants. So that's Controller Command D to deselect. Okay, so we're now going to work on the last part of this image that I've been playing with. It started getting large, so I made a new file. What I ended up doing is going into Topaz. And here, let me just show you, here's the before, here's the after. But let's go in, because that is the main subject that I really want you guys to hone in on the bird. So here's the before. This is at 200%, and here's the after. Up here on the right, you could see fur and feathers. And I thought about that because I've seen some images using this fur and feathers, which is pretty cool. There is a feather. Here it is, fur and feathers. One fur and feathers 1, fur and feathers 2, fur and feathers 3. You can see how much it really dramatically changes things up. I mean, it could look really pretty in a flow, but I didn't want it that much. So you down here at the bottom and Topaz, you can change the opacity a little bit. See how it's a little too much here? So I did a mask and removed some of the way it feels. It's too fake. But I do like the way the bird looks. So here is the before, and here's the after, and it just gave it a little glow to it. You could see kind of the glow in here. So I just gave it a little taste, and I ended up doing the 3, not the 2. Then I was like, let's make it really pop. I want to see what it looks like. And I did that with tonal contrast using the Nik, which is one of my favorite color effects. Here it is, tonal contrast. And you could see how it could really make it real strong, giving it a lot of pop. But you can always, take it down to the opacity that you want. You can change up your highlights and all that stuff here. We'll just play with this real quick. So here's the tonal contrast, and you can see it's really vibrant. At this moment, you can't really tell that there's a bird. When it comes to nature, that's what they do. They blend in. So I could either desaturate and make the bird saturated, but I like the bird. I like the saturation. So I started to say to myself, okay, let's desaturate this at least, because it's just too much, too big, too prominent. So you could see that I did, we'll click on it. See how the saturation's almost all the way down? I pulled it, I just double clicked, and I took this saturation off of the adjustments here and right there, and then I decided to desaturate because it's just too much. And then I just, made sure with the mask that I got rid of that. I started painting here, these colors up in here. I decided to go in with the paintbrush and remove, here's the paintbrush, and I removed those by this push it on that layer. And so what I did was I'll double click, and I just started clicking different areas and adjusting my paintbrush. You could see that I did remove some leaves over here at the bottom. There was a couple leaves in here, I've removed those, and I decided that at first I left this leaf in here because I thought, oh well, it's a leading line, but it was more distracting. It was just too much. So I went ahead and removed that leaf with the stamp. And this is cleaned up, but I can't remember what I cleaned up. I didn't write it on here. Sorry guys, but it's just an extra layer. I probably didn't do anything. I wanted to brighten up the bird a little bit. It was just too dark. So I double click on this, and you can see here there is right here on the adjustments, a brighten and contrast. That's what I use. I clicked on this, it gives me here, and I can adjust the bird here. And here's the contrast. You can see it, how it adjusts things. So, and then I didn't want to do it to everything, so I just masked it in. So this is what it would look like. I did the whole picture, but then I did a Control for PC, Command I to inverse this mask to make it all black, and then I painted with the white brush to bring in what I did when it came to the brightness and the contrast. So here's the before and here's the after. I made a stamp because I really thought I went away from it, and I realized it's just too, the bird, you just can't see it. So I started to make it blurry, do a blur to it, and I'm still like playing with some of the saturation a little bit because this was pulling my eyes away from the bird. And here, if you click on this, here it is, hue and saturation again. Now I'm really getting into the vignette, and the reason why is it was you just couldn't see the bird, and it was it was frustrating me. So I figured, okay, I like all the colors. I like that you could still in your mind see it's a grave site, but it's just the bird just blends in too much, and for my vlog I really wanted to talk about the bird. So how I did that was in one of my favorite things is Nik. So I'll show you you could do a Gaussian blur in Photoshop and then mask out the Gaussian blur if you wanted to do this. But what I like about color effects is here's the vignette blur. Kind of does everything for you. So here's the default. And see how it's really, very blurry. But what I like is these control points. Right now it's starting in the middle, but right here it says place on center. Well, I don't want the bird blurry. So I click on the bird, and everything around the bird is not blurry and everything around it is. And then you can adjust. Here's the different types. You can have it foggy. So these are different ways to play with this. I'm just sharing you these little tools. But this is something that it's just easy to do it in one shot. Again, you can use this you could do this in Photoshop for sure with a Gaussian blur, and then you could do the brightness, brighten everything up, and then you just do a mask around that, around the actual bird. The last thing I did was getting in and really thinking about what is distracting me. So here is a blowout. Now, I had said before that if you blow something out and you meant to blow it out, that's different. But this is not meant to be blown out, this area. Let's show you. See, that's just a mistake from post-processing, or my camera couldn't get it. So I've cleaned it up. And now it just looks like there's some rock and some grass around it, so you can't tell. And right here by the tail, you could see that there was some stuff underneath the tail, so you couldn't really tell that was a tail. So you got to look at your focal point here. And now that I removed that, now I can see that there is an actual tail. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a flower. I'm going to post-process a flower. I'm going to add canvas, because Debbie had asked questions about canvas. The more you guys ask me questions, the more I know I will need to hone in on certain areas. So here's my image for the vlog. I'll go ahead and leave a link down below if you guys want to check out our fun time in Gold Canyon, Arizona. And of course, like I said before, ask questions and I will help you. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week. Cheers!